many of the things you said about Bitcoin also hold for other cryptocurrency technologies that followed after. Can you say something to why you think Bitcoin is the superior technology from a pragmatic truth perspective than, say, Ethereum, but also other crypto like Bitcoin Cash, like other hard forks of Bitcoin, and or maybe things that might yet to be tools yet to be invented.
Yeah. So this is a good point of argument because a lot of people have countered me and said Bitcoin cannot be absolute scarcity because you can fork it and create something with the same properties as Bitcoin or potentially even better properties, right? You can create something with a deflationary monetary policy. That's what Bitcoin Cash was, actually. It forked Bitcoin with all of the same properties except for the block size that we alluded to earlier. The problem is that money is valued. Again, it's the good with a configuration of demand that is predominantly marketability. So it is valued based on its liquidity. That is, how many other trading partners are there in that monetary network? So it is a network valued because of its liquidity and network effects. So any new entrant into the market for money is incentivized to always choose the money with the deepest liquidity and the most network effects. This is why money has tended to be a winner-take-all market, because it's essentially a single-purpose tool, right? It is a tool for, if we consider that tools are time-saving devices, right? The shovel lets you dig more holes per man-hour than you can with your bare hands. Money is a tool, there's yet another definition of money, that lets us calculate, negotiate, and execute trades more quickly. So that function tends to coalesce towards one solution. And so the short answer would be that for the same reasons, quantifiable reasons, right? Like inflation resistance and liquidity and network effects, that we have one analog gold, we're only likely to have one digital gold. And I think the Bitcoin Cash fork proves that out empirically. It's a good case study because
It's one case study, right? But okay, so that's really well put. So like gold was sticky. Once it was accepted, the network effects, the winner take all took over. And here's a fundamentally different kind of like analog versus digital is a leap in technologies.
That's right.
And you're suggesting that there's unlikely to be other leaps of that kind into a whole nother kind of space of technologies.
I would argue that Bitcoin is kind of like the ideological synthesis of gold, taking the monetary properties of gold and combining them with the internet itself.
Right.
And in doing so, it has essentially perfected the properties of money, right? You can't get more divisible, durable, recognizable, portable, or scarce than Bitcoin. So Satoshi has he left no design space for a superior technology to intercede and outcompete Bitcoin at this point, now that it's established liquidity and the
far superior technology, right?
Yeah, but it's a combination of the tech itself and the social layer
and the social
that is coalesced to it.
You can't separate those two out.
That's right.
They're all connected, and then the political as well. I mean, but the portability, for example, that's another way to phrase that is the scaling. So the number of transactions, that's a limitation for Bitcoin. That many argue is a feature, many argue is a bug. You have a bunch of cryptocurrency technologies that are able to achieve much higher, much faster frequency of transactions, much more transactions, all that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on that? The low level of transactions that's possible with Bitcoin. Do you think that's a feature? Do you think that's a bug?
Necessary for security, actually. And even these other crypto assets that settle more quickly, they settle with less assurance of finality. So Nick Carter has a great piece on this, actually, called "It's the Settlement Assurance is Stupid." It's really good, where the gist of it is that there is more work being done in each block of Bitcoin that it is less vulnerable to reversion. So it's giving you higher degrees of assurance that your settlement or your trade has occurred with finality, whereas other blockchains are much more vulnerable. And again, with Bitcoin, the evolutionary path of money with gold is that it was first used as a collectible. It then became used as a store of value. After it had stored enough value, it began to be used as a medium of exchange. And then finally, when it was used widely enough as a medium of exchange, it becomes a unit of account. We actually start to think in the money. Mm-hmm. Bitcoin's following a similar path. So started out as kind of a collectible. Today, I would argue it's a store of value, one of the most effective store of value we've ever seen. So that evolutionary path that Bitcoin's following is similar to gold. First, a collectible. Today is store of value. To be an effective store of value, it has to optimize for supply cap.
Yes.
That has to be the first. And this is all Bitcoin really needs to do to be successful, by the way. Exactly what it's been doing for 12 years, virtually flawlessly, which is keep creating a block every 10 minutes and keep enforcing a supply cap of 21 million. As long as those two things hold, it is sound money, the ultimate sound money, the most inflation resistant money there's ever been. It's actually completely immune. It's taken unexpected inflation to 0%. We know with perfect certainty what Bitcoin supply will ever be. For it to be used more broadly as a medium of exchange, it can't make trade-offs at the base layer to increase its portability, for instance. Even though portability is maybe kind of a misnomer because Bitcoin has extremely high portability, just doesn't have extremely high transaction throughput. Right. So we could say you can move it pretty quickly anywhere in the world as long as you're willing to bid up for the block space. Mm-hmm. But you can't satisfy all the world's economic volume. You can't do 300 million transactions per second like you can on a centralized database like Visa. But Bitcoin needs to be this, it has to be a store of value first before it can be a medium of exchange. So it has to protect the supply cap first before making any trade-offs for that. And I would argue that that's why Bitcoin is so rigid, is that it's optimized for survivability and optimized for that supply cap. And it's pushing experimentation and other features that would increase its transaction throughput to higher layers. So I think Lightning Network is something that's very interesting. It's still early, but there's a lot of throughput already being used on the Lightning Network, and it makes some slight trade-offs in terms of the trust minimization of Bitcoin. You end up trusting these smart contracts instead to move the Bitcoin, but you pick up nearly unlimited transaction throughput. So that's how biology evolves. That's how the internet evolved. It evolves in layers. So I think Bitcoin, you can sort of conceive of it as the latest layer to the internet. And it's one that preserves this store value property better than any asset we've ever had.